This is Rachel Manella sitting with Grand Master Marvin Carmona on June 29th, 2022 at his dojo in Randolph, New Jersey. We're going to discuss Master Carmona's accomplishments in Isshinryu karate and his work as a martial arts instructor. First, can you please state and spell your name for me?
Okay, my name is Marvin A. Carmona.
Thank you.
You need me to spell it?
Yeah, just in
Okay.
case.
M-A-R-V-I-N, last name C-A-R-M-O-N-A.
Thank you. And where were you born?
I was born in San Jose, Costa Rica.
And can you tell me about your childhood, what it was like growing up there when you came to the United States?
Okay, I was born in 1960. I came to the United States in 1966. And I lived in the South Bronx of New York City from 1966 till about 1976 or 75. It was a really rough area at that point in time. It was called Fort Apache, the Bronx. There was a lot of gang activity, and it was a relatively rough neighborhood in the South Bronx.
And so growing up in that neighborhood, what was it like? What did you do during school, after school, with your parents, friends?
Okay. Well, after school, normally it was pretty stressful just getting to school. You know, there's a lot of gang activity, a lot of violence. So it was just getting to school was a chore. I was always worried about that. Meaning sometimes I'm Hispanic, and sometimes we had to go through the part of the Bronx in which the Italians lived. So it was kind of like you had to either run through or sneak through, otherwise you get chased and beat up. So that was kind of stressful. And that's how you started your day. And the end of the day was kind of similar until you got home. But once you got home, you know, it's just pretty normal, you know, just hanging out, watching Sesame Street and stuff like that, and doing my homework. And that's actually where I started practicing the martial arts.
Okay, so did you get into it in order to protect yourself?
Yes. There was a young man who lived on the 5th floor. His name was Willie De Jesus, and he was a Shodan, had just made a Shodan in Shotokan Karate. And he was maybe all of 21 years old, and he got a bunch of the kids that lived in our project, and he started teaching us Shotokan Karate down in the furnace area of the projects. And it was you know, he didn't charge us, he just wanted to teach us, and that was my beginning in the martial arts, and I accredit that for keeping me out of the gangs and off of drugs and so forth. And then the gang members really didn't mess with you at that point in time.
How old were you when you started with him?
Probably about 9 years old.
9. And how long did that last? Like through school, or did you...
Till we moved out.
Okay.
Till we moved out in 75.
Yeah. Where'd you move to?
We moved to New Jersey.
Okay.
To Dover, New Jersey.
Was that a big change?
It was a huge change. It was literally like moving from a concrete jungle, very few trees, a lot of burned out buildings, stolen vehicles, and all of that stuff. And then one day I came home wearing gang colors, and my mom said, we're gonna take a Lakeland bus, and we're gonna go to this place called Dover, and we're gonna check it out. And Saturday we were there, and I remember when the bus finally pulled into Dover. And Dover is a suburban area, but it really is it's pretty modern and from that perspective. And I remember getting out of the bus and looking around and saying, "Oh my God, this is the country." It was a drastic change.
Yeah. Was it just you and your mom? Did you have any siblings?
Yeah, I had. It was my mother, my sister, and my grandmother, and myself.
Okay. Wow. So we talked about kind of how you first got interested in martial arts. How did you get into Isshinryu?
Okay, when we moved to Dover, there was a gentleman called Robert Murphy. Robert Murphy studied Isshinryu Okinawa Te, and I studied with him till I made my green belt. And then I went to a karate demonstration in a town called Ledgewood. It was a mall, and I saw a gentleman by the name of Dale Jenkins who had an Isshinryu school. And I was so blown away by the discipline, by the respect, by the fighting, the kumite, which I love to fight. And I said, you know what, that's the place for me. And then I transferred over to Mr. Jenkins right around 76 or 77. And I stayed with him until the date of his death in 1984, October 9th.
Wow. And have you practiced any other styles of martial arts?
Yes. In 1996, I started studying jiu-jitsu with Master Soke Di Pasquale, one of the most well-known and reputable jiu-jitsu families in the entire world. I was a 6th-degree black belt then in 1996, and I just took my black belt off and started as a white belt, which is really quite refreshing. And because there's no pressure as a white belt, you can make as many mistakes as you want. And stayed with him till this day.
Wow. And so when you think about the other styles you've tried, you've stuck with jiu-jitsu, but what makes you choose Isshinryu as your main style, or that you keep coming back to?
Well, that is my root style. I consider that's where I earned my first black belt, and the one that I spent the most time training in. Again, now I'm a 9th-degree black belt, but like in 1996, I was a 6th dan already, and to me, that is the style that is more that fits my physique, that fits me, my mindset, and my lifestyle best. I hold black belts in Kendo as well, Japanese fencing, Okinawan weaponry, Kodo, under Yoshiko Dimitrich, who was one of Akamine Sensei's top students, who trained directly with Taida Shinken. And I have a black belt in that. I also have a black belt in Matayoshi Koburo under Sekichi Odo until he passed. And I enjoyed that very much as well. And then I have 3rd-degree black belt in Kendo under Hanji Joe Miller as well.
So, is there something, besides it being your root style, what draws you back to Isshinryu? Do you think there's something special about it?
I do. It's simplicity. I like the fact that the stances are very natural. It really simulates the way you walk. So it doesn't have a lot of those deep stances which are impractical in combat. It's a pretty straight up system, very direct. I like to call it KISS, keeping it short and simple. And Isshinryu does that. And I believe that in an altercation, when push comes to shove, it's the simple things that are going to work for you. When Master Uezu Angi Uezu came to the United States, I went up to him and I asked him, Master, what is the most deadly technique that there is in all of Isshinryu karate? And he said, kiki, kiki, punchy, punchy. And basically just a good kick and a good punch will get the job done. Just make sure it's landed fast and hard.
Could you lay out for me what you see as your Isshinryu lineage from you back to Shimabuku?
Hi. Okay, my sensei, Dale Jenkins, was a direct student of Joe Buckles. Joe Buckles was a direct student of Don Nagel, and Don Nagel was a 1st-generation student of Master Kishiro Shimabuku, the founder himself.
So this is your chance to tell me a little bit about your career in karate, your tournaments, any tests that stand out, events that you've gone to, anything, any stories you want to share.
Let's see, I've competed pretty much all over the United States and outside of the United States. I'm a multiple-time IWKA world champion in kata and kobudo, which I'm very proud of, because that tournament is held only once every 2 years, and it's a very big tournament. And so I hold those as some of my my most prestigious victories. I'm very proud of the fact that under me, we were able to train the the youngest Isshinryu Grand Champion at the IWKA's, Hunter Giles. At 18 years of age, he won the Grand Championship at the IWK, or the Isshinryu World Championships. We're very proud of that. That's a hell of an accomplishment. And also Kimberly Platt became the youngest woman to ever win the Isshinryu World Karate Championships at 16 years of age. Since then, they've moved the category. You can only compete 18 and above for the women, but she did it when she was 16 after just having earned her black belt, which was an amazing accomplishment. And she's a 3-time IWK world champion, and she's won many grand championships throughout the United States. I've also won at the Isshinryu Hall of Fame, in kata and kobudo as well, and at the United States Open in Orlando, where there were about 2,000 competitors. I competed in the professional black belt division, and I think there was about 21 competitors in there, and I was sandwiched in between a gentleman from Germany and a guy from Australia, and I went in and I won the division.
What year was that?
Oh God, I forgot. It was about 2 years before COVID, I think.
Okay.
And I did it just for shits and giggles.
Yeah.
You know, I just, you know, I still felt strong and shape and solid, and I said, well, you know, let me go out there and give this one more crack, and it worked out good.
How about your first black belt, when you first made Shodan? What year was that?
1982.
And what was that testing like?
It was hard. It was a sensei, Mr. Jenkins would have a week-long karate camp in the Poconos, and it was a very intense physical test, and they really tested you right to your core. It's not like just like an 8-hour test and pass or fail, or it's an intense week-long exam. And you know, you sleep there, you barely sleep, you fight through the night, you fight through the day, and I had to fight about 25 black belts.
Wow. Continuously?
Yes.
Wow. That's a lot of fights.
It was a lot of fights. It was a lot of fights.
And when did you start teaching?
I started teaching for Sensei when I was in EQ at Picatinny Arsenal, which is a military base, and I used to teach the officers' kids and some of the military personnel that were there as well. That was my first teaching opportunity.
How old were you?
Maybe 17.
You were so young.
I was pretty young.
That's a big responsibility.
It was a big responsibility. Very intimidating, because you're in a military base, so you really have to get their respect.
Yeah. Were you ever worried or nervous when you were doing it?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was. I'm gonna be truthful. Of course, I was intimidated. But Sensei gave me a good set of skills. He was very organized, very detail oriented. He had a degree in business management, and so not only was he an excellent black belt, because at that time we had about 56 black belts and 500 students, which even by today's standards is almost unheard of. And he was doing that in the 70s, he was way ahead of the curve. So there's one thing I take away from that, was the fact that the man didn't just hand me a fish. He taught me to fish and how to organize and how to run a top-notch school. And I did that until the date of his death, which was October 9th, 1984.
And so when did you open your own dojo?
That was September of 1986. It was called North Jersey Martial Arts Academy.
And where was that located?
It was located, I rented a little space off of from a dance school called North Jersey School of Baton and the Arts. And she sublet me some space, and that's how I got started.
In which city?
That would be in Hopatcong, New Jersey.
Oh, wow. And today you have two locations.
We have 2 locations, but we have Another location that one of our black belts runs in Rockaway, and then there's another location in Massachusetts called Upper Cape Cod Martial Arts Academy.
Okay, and they're connected.
Yeah, we're all connected. They're
then,
under my association.
Okay, and then your locations are in Randolph and Landing, New Jersey.
That is correct.
And how many students do you have right now, for example?
Well, at our peak, we were upwards of 300, but then COVID hit us, and then we lost about 100 right off the bat. And so we're trying to recover, try to get back up to that number, and that's what we're currently trying to do.
Okay. So, continuing to talk about teaching, what's your philosophy of teaching?
I believe that the most important element of teaching the martial arts is teaching character development. I put a heavy emphasis on that. I like to be able to give the students life skills so that they're able to go through life knowing that once they have achieved their black belts, that there's nothing in this world that they can't do. If they can do this, they can do anything. So I like to empower them from the perspective of having that confidence to be able to tackle any challenge, any obstacles in their lives, and you falling back on their skills that they learned in the dojo, as that, never say die and never give up kind of attitude.
Mm-hmm. Has that ever caused tension between you and their families, or anything that, not that you're teaching anything that we don't want people to know, but has it ever caused any issues?
Well, sometimes unfortunately, like in most activities, because there's sports, you can play baseball, you can play soccer, you can play football, but you can't play karate. Mm-hmm. Karate is a skill that is with you for your entire life. So it's something that's inherent in you. And sometimes, you have issues with helicopter parents or parents that like to live surreptitiously through their children and sometimes push them too hard. And one of the things that I firmly believe in, especially when the kids are going up for their black belts, is I'll sit them down and we have a conversation and we discuss. And they understand that a black belt test is a year-long commitment on top of all of the years that took to get you to that point. It's a lifelong commitment. And sometimes some of the kids have been very, very honest with me, and they said, Hanchi, I think I'd like to wait another year. I'm not quite ready. I feel that the test, I'm not prepared for that kind of test. And I like listening to them. And when they say that to me, I kind of respect that. And I've always listened to them. And if they don't feel ready, then, I'm with you. I'm going to support you in that decision. Whereas the parents say, well, my son should be testing, and, why aren't you testing him? And the conflict arises because, the parents are trying to push the child, and I'm trying to listen to the child. And sometimes that's where you butt heads with the parents, and ultimately, this is not a democracy. This is a benign dictatorship, in the sense that, I've been doing this a long time. I've graduated hundreds of black belts throughout my career, and I always have their best interest in mind. And if it comes to terms that they don't agree with the fact that I want to hold off or wait or something along those lines, then I courteously ask them to leave the school.
Mm. Thinking on the other side of things, other martial artists, other members of the Isshinryu community, have you ever, or has your dojo or your students ever faced difficulties because you have so many young people, children that are from your school?
In what sense?
As far as respect-wise, you teach kids. Have you ever come up, butted heads with any other Isshinryu people or any martial artist that says, has their own opinions about whether we should teach children or not?
Well, any professional academy understands that 80% of your overall student body is normally in the kids population, which is, the majority of your base. So if people have an issue working with children, that's their issue. They don't have to teach kids. As for me, I do believe that we can change the world one black belt at a time. And the sooner that we get that kid in the dojo and we get that kid learning and moving forward, we have the ability to keep them out of gangs, keep them off of drugs, making sure that they make wise decisions. Like the word of the month this month is called guidance. And what is guidance after all but giving advice, leading by example, and giving them the tools to better adapt and to better deal with life's challenges. Now, you mentioned earlier that have I had problems with parents before? I just had a problem recently at a major competition in which one of our students lost a match, and he took his helmet off and he threw his helmet. And it was an AAU competition. Immediately, the American Athletic Union suspended the child from AAU competition for a year. As soon as I heard about it, I contacted the tournament director. I profusely apologized and explained to him that that is not the culture of our academy. The parent that particular parent has a tendency of pushing that child too hard, and for them, it's not about the life lessons, it's more about the trophy or the piece of plastic. And that's the wrong message to send to the child. So in addition to getting a 1-year suspension from the AAU, he also received a mandatory suspension from this academy for 3 months. I suspended him and his father from the school. I fully did not expect them to come back after such an incident. Right. But sure enough, after 3 months, they were back at it, and I believe that the child learned an important life lesson in how to control your temper and not throwing an outburst, because it is going to have consequences here.
Yeah, and in life too, right? You can't behave that way and expect nothing to happen. So, what do you think is the most valuable aspect or the most valuable aspects of Isshinryu?
What are the most valuable? I love the vertical fist. I love the snap. I love the the stances, which are very upright, very natural. Since human beings are bipedal, we move with 2 feet. We don't really have these long, exaggerated stances. It allows you to shift your weight. It's called a kutsudachi, basically just adjusting your balance, moving. It allows you to really move in a very natural way. And since fights are dynamic and they're constantly changing, if you're too locked into patterns, it makes it difficult for you to adjust during the course of a fight. So I feel that those are some of the strengths that I love about Isshinryu: the simplicity, the movement, the punching, how it has a vertical fist instead of a corkscrew fist. Your kicks, rather than thrusting or doing kekome motions, thrusting motions, they're snapping motions, which are difficult to catch in a street fight situation. And it's just a fast style, very fast style.
Have you ever needed to use your karate to defend yourself or others?
Yeah, absolutely.
Any stories you want to share? What were the results?
Well, let's see. I was with one of my higher ranking black belts. One day after class, it was a Saturday, and we were heading into this fair kind of situation, and there was a group of gentlemen on motorcycles, and you know, my friend and I admired the motorcycles. The gentleman that we were walking with apparently said something under his breath to the motorcyclist, and the next thing I know, they're all getting up and walking behind us. And the guy who appeared to be the leader would come over and said something to me, and my friend Ron, now mind you, I didn't know what was going on because neither him or I said anything. We just kind of kept walking. It was the other gentleman that said something probably inappropriate to them. But sometimes you're guilty by association, and so they came up to settle the score. My friend Ron came up and tried to stand and, de-escalate the situation. The guy turned around and hit him, dropped him in the middle of the street. And then I hit the gentleman with a roundhouse kick to the stomach. I folded him over like a cheap accordion. And then somebody came behind me, hit me on the head with a bottle. I turned around and punched him square in the face. I dropped him. This fight happened all in the middle of the street. We stopped traffic in both directions. And it was a pretty interesting incident.
Yeah, scary. I mean, you don't expect, you're just walking along and you weren't expecting that
to happen.
Yeah.
And it happened. Luckily, the police did show up and, I was fine. The other guys weren't, but I was good.
What advice do you have for Isshinryu students and instructors?
Advice as far as teaching advice, training advice, what type?
Wherever you want to start, you could start with teaching, training, and move on from there.
Well, if you're gonna instruct, like I stated earlier, 80% of our student population is mainly children. You need to have a very age-specific curriculum, a very age-specific class. Meaning, in this school, we teach 3, 4, and 5-year-olds a very specific curriculum that's age-appropriate, designed to develop gross motor skills, listening, some coordination, some agility. Those are the kind of things, not so much the kicking and the punching, but just coordination, learning how to line up, learning those kinds of skills that will help them when they go into kindergarten and preschool and kindergarten. The 6, 7, and 8-year-olds, they start learning the actual beginnings. We call them little dragons. They start actually learning proper stances. They start learning their katas. We truncate the katas a little bit for them so they're not that long, because it's difficult for them to remember long forms. So we do some truncation of forms to help them with that. And then, of course, we have the 9, 10, 11, and 12-year-old group, which we call the Jaguar class. And that's when they really start getting into the meat and potatoes of their art. That's when they really they have the acumen to really develop into strong athletes, and we really work with them hard there. And then, of course, the teen and adults class, which is another group in and of itself, because the difference between a child and an adult is a child sometimes gets dropped off at the school and they may not want to be there, but the parent kind of forces them to be there, and they have to, So what you need to do, what I like to do, is I do something called edutainment. I like to educate and entertain them at the same time, because I do believe that if you're smiling and you're learning and the class is moving fast at a rapid pace, it's a lot easier for the little kids. Whereas the adults want to be there. They've made the commitment of their time and their energy. They drove to the school. So it's a lot easier to teach an adult from that perspective, because again, they're ready to learn. It's simpler to learn. Our older adult population, we need to be careful with them, because that's another beast in and of itself, because as you start getting more mature into your 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, your body changes accordingly, and I encourage them to adjust their martial arts also accordingly as they start aging, because I do believe that karate is for life, karate is for health. So if you don't have a good scientific approach to your training, that's why my wife and I got degrees in exercise science, because we wanted to learn more about human anatomy and proper exercise regimens and techniques, and that's helped a lot for me.
Mm-hmm. And what about as far as advice for students? If you had a student, if maybe they're struggling with their karate, or it's not coming as easy as maybe their friend is for their friend.
One with children, they can't help but to compare themselves to each other. And I often tell them that the easiest way to become unhappy is to compare yourself to others. Learn your strengths, learn your weaknesses, learn your skill sets, and run your race. Do not run a race for somebody else, because if you do that, you're going to become discouraged. Also, I have a lot of little things that I do with them. I like to send them good job letters on a regular basis to let them know that I'm thinking of them, that I'm noticing their hard work, Also, I do something that's called the 3x3 rule. Every time a student comes into the school, the three things that I always try to do, I try to establish good eye contact with them. I like to call their name out. And I also believe in appropriate physical contact, like a high five or, something along those lines that's appropriate. Because that means you've interacted with each student at least 3 times during the course of their training, which lets them know that they're there, that you notice them, and that you care for them. And I think at the end of the day, if you, the student really doesn't care how much you know. They want to know how much you care about them. And if you have that approach, I think that your retention rates are going to be much, much greater. And my retention rates have always been very, very solid. And now as we are striving to recover from COVID, we need to employ and use all of those skills to make sure that we lock the back door, meaning the students don't leave, and that we keep the ones that we're getting. And if we have that approach, I think we're going to see success. And I would like to see that for all of our schools, regardless if you're in New Jersey or if you're in Florida or if you're in Peru or Denmark or wherever you are. We all have that one thing in common. We all have a passion for our art, and we have an obligation, a giri, to keep it going forward and to continue to promote that art.
You had mentioned earlier, but I'm wondering if you have an estimate of how many students you've promoted to black belt.
It's easily over 200.
Do many of them stay with it or come back to it, do you think?
A lot of them do. But sometimes also life takes them. For example, we get our students when they're 3 years old, and they stay with us up until the point in time that they go to college. And then when they go to college, some of them will come back every summer and continue to train. And then some of them, when they go to college, I don't see them again. But I'm okay with that because it's part of life. It's part of nature. And I know that they're going to be safe no matter where they go. But on the other hand, I've had guys that have been with me since, since the 80s and are still training. And some of them are pretty old, at this point in time. I shouldn't say old, maybe more mature. But yeah, they stay with us for a long, long time, which is a good thing.
So you were inducted into the Isshinryu Hall of Fame in 2012.
That's correct.
What did that mean to you?
It's a combination of your life's work. It's the recognition from your peers that they have acknowledged that you're not just a pretty good martial artist. It isn't the Hall of Pretty Good. It's the Hall of Fame. It's a definite feather in your cap. It's not something to be boastful about, but it's just something that it's a cause for reflection, to be happy that that you've stuck with something, that you've done something, and that you've been acknowledged by your community, by the world that you live in as far as your martial arts world. And it is quite an honor, and that's what that means to me. It's a tremendous honor.
Yeah. Do you remember they often, or they always, I'm not sure if it's always, but ask the inductees to give a seminar. Do you remember what your seminar was about?
Yes, I did. I did bunkai for different forms. I did some restraints. I did some joint lock manipulations, and strategical and tactical work.
Did you have fun?
I loved it. It went by really fast.
Yeah. Are there other accomplishments or awards you've received in Isshinryu or other places that you're really proud of? Yes,
one of the biggest things that I'm really super proud of is I mentioned to you that I was originally from the Bronx, and then I went to Dover, Dover High School. As a matter of fact, that's where I graduated back in 1979. And about 6 years ago, I was inducted into the Dover High School Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Which was a tremendous accomplishment also, because I got inducted with a gentleman that had his PhD from MIT, from some really, really cool stuff. And to know that my community work my business acumen, the longevity within my community, and the attributes that I've been able to give back to my community was recognized, and now I got a permanent place in my old high school, and not too many people can say that.
Yeah, that's really special.
It really is cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
Any others? Anything else? Any tournaments maybe you've won? We talked a little bit about tournaments.
We talked about those, yeah. Well, one other great honor has been to be voted in as the president of American Isshinryu and the Don Nagel lineage. It's a big responsibility because our Isshinryu has different lineages. Some people are Harold Long, Harold Mitchum, Don Nagel, different lineages, and to know that that mantle has been passed on to me by my peers up here in New Jersey, where Don Nagel was from, is a tremendous honor, because they could have given it to other people, but my elders felt that it was appropriate to be passed to me because I could lead it forward.
Right.
That was a biggie. And of course, also I'm a director on the Isshinryu Hall of Fame.
Right.
So not only do you get inducted into the Hall of Fame, but years later they recognize what you can contribute, and then they ask me to join the board. And that's a really big responsibility, because you're like a gatekeeper in there, and it's nothing to be taken lightly.
So my next question was about being on the IHOF board as well as American Isshinryu. Why do you take an active role in these organizations? Why do you think it's important?
I think it's important to move the football forward. Master Nagel is no longer with us. He's gone. Master Long, Master Mitchum, Master Shimabuku. They all gave something to the art. And if we just take and not give, there's no balance. You can't just take. You better be able to give back. And this is a small measure that I can use to give back to my art, and to my friends, and to the young people that are coming up behind me now, that I know someday, when my time comes to step down, that I know that I've done the best that I can to lead a different generation and to educate so they in turn will be the educators of Isshinryu moving forward. And if I, at the end of the day, if I can close my eyes and rest, knowing that I've moved that ball forward, that's going to be very satisfying. And that's why I do it. I volunteer. I don't get paid.
Right. So you had mentioned the different lineages, and this has led to different overarching organizations that sometimes work together, sometimes work for the same purpose, but at cross purposes. What do you think the future is for a style that's somewhat divided?
It's not unusual for styles to have different lineages. You could see that in Isshinryu, because there's different lineages of Isshinryu, but they're still all Isshinryu. Mm-hmm. And you see that within Isshinryu, but you also see that within Goju. Mm-hmm. You see that even within the Chinese styles. So that's not necessarily unusual. One of the cycles that I would like to see broken sometimes is there was this element. I mean, we're all very competitive. We're A-type personalities. I do believe that in order for you to be the head of an association, you have to be driven. And sometimes that passion to drive forward sometimes drove wedges between the different groups. With what I do in American Isshinryu is I want to make sure that we honor lineage, honor our lineages, but I also want to make sure that we move forward together. It doesn't mean that, just because I'm a Don Nagel black belt lineage, I can't be friends or trained with someone who is from the Harold Long Mitchum, from the Harold Long lineage or other lineages. We can all honor our lineages, but we have the obligation of moving forward together.
Right.
And that's kind of like what my vision is with American Isshinryu.
And still honoring that we all come from Shimabuku.
Of course.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like to run a dojo with your wife?
You know what? It's really cool. You know, sometimes we butt heads, but I think that's not necessarily unusual. But more than anything, I think that that there's a certain synergy that we have together. There's strengths that I have, but I also know that there's weaknesses that I have, and she complements those areas in me that aren't as strong as others. I mean, I'm technically very strong. I'm good at what I do, but organizationally, she can run a very tight ship with inventories. From the business end, my wife is a CPA, and those skill sets have been incredibly important in the organization and development of this academy. And it's really cool to work together. Not always easy. I mean, sometimes you disagree, because she's a 6th-degree black belt. She's excellent in her own way, in her own ways, and I respect that. But by and large, we do a good job together. And if you look around the country, if you look around the world, it seems that the most successful dojos are always those dojos in which there's a partnership, whether it's a husband and wife or something along those lines. If you can work well with your partner, especially if it's your wife, then I think you work as one moving forward. And two heads are better than one, no doubt about it. Because what if I drop something, she picks it up and goes with it, and vice versa.
And you received your degree in exercise science, or is that what it was called?
Yes.
I want to make sure I got that right. Why was that important?
I think for all of those years, I've been, I guess, breaking the body down, learning how to break things, and I wanted to learn more about the physiology, anatomy and physiology. I wanted to learn more about that. I wanted to learn more about kinesiology. It's a science degree, which is really good. So it's not like a personal trainer kind of thing. That's more just the athleticism end of it. I have the athleticism end of it too, because you need to know all that, but more importantly, the scientific elements of how the body works. And I mean, at 50 years of age, I was in a classroom taking chemistry classes, and I got to tell you, that almost killed me, because you got to relearn to learn academic elements, and the older that you get, I mean, my professors, some like Dr. Kettering, I mean, she a very lovely young lady, but she maybe only 30 years old, and I'm literally almost twice her age trying to learn that. She was very patient with me. I needed a 75 to pass my class, and I mean, I was losing sleep. I wasn't getting it. And the day before my final, that young lady spent about 8 hours going through chemistry with me.
Wow.
I mean, who does that? Who does that for just a student? But she put in that kind of time to help me right before my final exam. And when I took my final exam, I got a 76. I passed. I hope she didn't just give me this, because I really tried very hard, but I'm trying to give her credit for, that's a teacher, because she really cared about helping me to succeed.
Right.
And that was a very important lesson that translated onto the floors as well. So that's why that was kind of important for me, and it humbled me a lot too. I got in trouble a couple of times too, especially with my speech teacher. I'll tell you that privately off the record, though. I drove her nuts.
Well, you're speaking all the time on the floor, right? And then to learn a different way to do it. Do you think that popular culture, such as television and movies, has an effect on established dojos and systems like yours, like Isshinryu?
Sure. take the Karate Kid, the second coming of the Karate Kid, Cobra Kai, I believe. You saw an instant resurgence of interest in the martial arts coming back. The original Karate Kid back in 1984 with Ralph Macchio, that gave the studios a huge boost. So yeah, I believe there's a direct correlation. And if you're intelligent, for example, when the Ninja Turtles movie came out, we gathered the whole school and we rented an entire movie theater and we went to see the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We did the same thing with Kung Fu Panda. And it was a great way of getting the troops together and going to the movie in our gis and so forth. I got a Cobra Kai gi upstairs hanging up that I wore when I went to see the Karate Kid movie. It definitely has a very good positive effect from a marketing perspective with the schools. Some parents look at it as violence and stuff like that, but if you really look at the messages that that those particular movies, the Karate Kid, Kung Fu Panda, Teenage Mutant, there was some really good moral and decent messages that came across, and I think those things really helped our industry tremendously.
Yeah. Your wife had also mentioned, the televising of UFC and MMA. Do you think that's has an effect, positive or negative, to traditional martial arts?
Traditional martial arts or traditional dojos, if you're talking karate, okay, it's very different than UFC and MMA. I think to a certain extent, the message that the UFC and MMA sends is a very negative message that we're giving our communities, because in certain aspects it's almost like human cockfighting. And if you look at them, I firmly feel that those athletes that are in there now are going to be severely damaged as when they get to be my age. And my age, I'm all dinged up. I've got all kinds of issues, but I move well and I'm still able to practice. But what I see from these kids wrenching their arms, the punches to the head that they take with a 4-ounce glove, it's almost like getting hit with your bare knuckles. They're all cut up, their ears, their hearing, their vision. There's going to be some, so I'm not a fan of the message that it sends to them. I do enjoy watching some of the fights though. I'm not going to, lie, and I can do good groundwork as well. But I'd rather stay on my feet and leave it at that. Yeah,
continue walking another day.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah, like I stated earlier, I think that karate is for health. Karate is for life. And ultimately, if your life is in danger, karate can save your life.
What are your thoughts, comments on organizations that are termed McDojos? What does that word mean to you?
Well, there's certain dojos. I've got to give a lot of credit, not that I'm saying that all Taekwondo schools are McDojos, but the Korean arts, when they initially came to the United States, they had a much better business model. They understood the importance of being able to pay your rent, pay your lights, earning a living, putting gasoline in your car. And so they had it all over the Americans with that is concerned. Unfortunately, some schools that are termed to be McDojos, if you pay, for example, there's a black belt club. If you pay your $14,000 to belong to your black belt club, you're pretty much guaranteed a black belt within 3 to 4 years. In our dojo, obviously you can't do that. It just doesn't happen. But they have a very good business model element, and I think that that a lot of us can learn organizational skills from them, because they run their schools like businesses, where sometimes people in our style in particular, they almost view earning a living as a martial artist as a sellout. Oh, the guy's a sellout. He's teaching martial arts commercially. You know what? It's not like that at all. I think owning a school and being a professional martial arts instructor is very different than being just a martial arts instructor that's there, you know, twice a week, teaches maybe 1-2 classes and then goes home. Sometimes you're on the mats, you teach, you know, 5 classes in a row. In addition to that, you do your own personal training. That's another 2 hours that you spend every day. And then you have to prepare class plans, agendas. There's so much more to being a professional that I wish more people would look at that and not be resentful of someone that is successful, that is earning a living doing something that they love, but rather learn from that and kind of replicate it so that they in turn could be successful. And instead of having to go to a job from 9 to 5, their job is being on those mats that evening and watching their students, developing their students, seeing them grow. So yeah, there's a huge difference between a professional dojo and a garage dojo.
Sure.
Mac dojos, like you were saying before, their skill set, sometimes you look at their students and their students are honestly terrible, because they're not so much concerned about the quality of the student, but more concerned about getting their testing fees and getting all of those other things. So there is a fine line that you have to walk.
Sure. Well, you know, you walk into your school, other schools, Isshinryu related, and you can talk to you about the history, and, you know, for a lay person to come in who never did karate, or maybe they did it when they were little and never achieved black belt, and now their kid wants to try karate because they saw it on TV, they don't always know the questions to ask, to know that there's a history to the style. And some of these schools, it's not even, the person might not even have a black belt who owns it or runs it. They might put a black belt on, they might get their curriculum the week before, and then from, you know, their franchise, and then they know what to teach that week. Have you ever had any students come in from those organizations and, you know, realize that maybe their kid isn't getting the skills they wanted them to get, and they come to you?
Yeah, no, I've had transfer students that have come from Tang Sudo or Taekwondo, and I'm not picking on Taekwondo. I think it's a fine art. I really do. It like anything else, it's the practitioner. The belt doesn't make the man makes the belt. So they come to our school, and unfortunately I look at their skill sets, and in one case I had a young woman that came in who had a black belt on, and she just didn't know much. And again, is it the student's fault? No, it's the instructor's fault for not having a better set of standards. So yeah, that does happen occasionally where they come in. Also the structure, when they come into our school is a very structured environment, and I firmly believe that students, and especially teenagers, like structure. If it's too loosey-goosey or this and that, you'll tend to lose them because there is no sets of rules. Do they like rules all the time? No. Okay. But at the end of the day, I do feel that they do respect the fact that you hold them accountable and you give them rules to follow, and they have to follow them.
So what do you see as the future of karate and Isshinryu in the United States? Where do you think it's going?
Well, I think we're going to be in for some rough times still. The next year to 2 years, I think, with the first of all, a lot of schools unfortunately were lost during the COVID pandemic. Unfortunately, that took a lot of people out. It was very heartbreaking to see. They just didn't adjust properly or well, and not too many people did. So those that survived now have to deal with the challenges of a downturn in the economy, which we're looking and experiencing at right now, where parents are having to make difficult choices, whether they're going to put gasoline in their car, buy groceries, and can they afford karate? Something's got to give. I feel that there's going to be a contraction within the schools. The schools are going to have to be very intelligent, pull in a little bit more, and be more cautious moving forward. I think that'll last about 1 to 2 years. After that, once that corner has been passed, I think that the sky's the limit. I think that there's definite passion, there's definite interest in it. I feel that we have to start developing the next layer underneath my generation now, because unfortunately I'm becoming one of the elder statesmen now, and we need to make sure that we start focusing on our younger generation, making sure that we give them the skill sets and the knowledge so that they can take the ball. We took the ball and we moved the ball forward.
Mm-hmm.
So we want them to step up and move the ball even further ahead. And I think we're poised to do that. There's some quality young people out there that their heart's in the right place. If we keep in mind that Isshinryu means with all of your heart, one heart away, if they do it from their heart, I feel that we're going to be successful, because the heart at the end of the day is a symbol of dynamic endeavor. And if their heart's in the right place, I think they're going to be very successful and they'll move the ball forward. But my generation's got to still guide a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And then, we need to relinquish the reins.
Not easy to say, not so easy to do, right?
Yeah.
So, outside of karate, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do?
I like bonsai. I like to play with my trees, and I had just had an azalea that just bloomed, and it made it all through the winter. It bloomed beautifully last year, it bloomed beautifully this year. It gives me a great amount of satisfaction to see the blossoms. I enjoy doing that. I kill more trees than Lord knows. I would be like a serial killer of bonsai trees, but I continue to kill them and continue to learn. So I enjoy doing that. I started playing golf when I was older, 50 years old, and I started playing the guitar. From all of these years of just keeping my fists closed and hitting things, the guitar is giving me some more dexterity that is good. And it's also making my brain sharper, because obviously you have to remember a lot of stuff, a lot of chords, a lot of notes, songs, and so forth. So those are the things that I enjoy now. And of course, my grandchild.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have for you today. Is there anything else you wanted to add? Anything?
No, that's it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.